So we were discussing the difference between NPV and IRR judgment, because sometimes if you don't have same similarities, if you don't have all of these similarities between projects, then the comparison might not be, if you want, very clear. Because if you take the criteria of NPV, you can have contradictory result with IRR. Why? Because let's say if you have projects A and B, okay, the lifetime of project A is just 5 years, while the lifetime of project B is 30 years. And the discount rate in project A is just, for example, 1%, while the discount rate, the actual discount rate in B, for example, is 5%. Okay, and if you do the analysis of your systems, you have that when you calculate the IRR, you obtain, for example, for A, let's say an IRR equal to 5%, while for B, the IRR, or here let us say it is high for A, 25% IRR, while for B the IRR is 20%, for example. So first, for both cases, okay, it's economically viable project because the I is smaller than the IRR. Okay, and for both cases you have a large range to work with, but for case A the IRR is larger. So this make this project more attractive, because having a high range of IRR means that you can implement it even in risky countries. Okay, so it will work in a very good way.
بس
This means
دكتور
that you can expect. Yes,
we can't compare here لأنه
I know, I
المشاكل
know. Okay, I know you can't compare. Look, the idea is, this is what they are telling you. They are telling you it's better whenever you compare two projects, it's better to have the same lifetime, the same risk profile, 100%. Okay, but in case you are comparing projects where you don't have same factors, you can have contradictory results. Yani if you compare NPV, you might say A is, let's say B is better than A. But if you compare IRR, you say A is better than B. Then you cannot judge, you cannot make a final decision. So that's why we are saying that we should have same characteristics. This is the reason. Okay? Because if we don't have same characteristics, let's say even here, if you have same I, for both cases, okay, whenever you have in general, whenever you have longer time, you have more operational costs, more maintenance cost, etc. Plus in general, you will not have, larger the period, in general you will have more risks, so the discount rate will be larger. So it's true that it's not good to compare, because as you mentioned, it's better to have all of these equal, or at least very close to each other, in order to make the comparison. But in case all of these are the same, يعني, except let's say the lifetime, all of the factors are the same except the lifetime, you might have, and when we talk about the lifetime in general, the risk profile also might not be the same, because the risk profile is depending on lifetime. And if you want to compare, you can get different result if you compare NPV and IRR. This is what they are telling you. So they are telling you, if you don't have the same factors, okay, the comparison can give you contradictory results if you compare NPV and IRR. Because if you don't have the same lifetime, even if the internal rate of return of project A is larger, let's say, than the internal rate of return of project B, this does not mean that the absolute gain, when we talk about absolute value of gain, it means, let's say in absolute in dollars, not relative. Relative, in general, relative value is better indication. Absolute, you can just get the income in dollars. Okay, so even if the IRR for A is larger than the IRR for B, you can have the net present value for A smaller than the net present value for B. So if you want to decide on if your criteria is just, let's say, the amount of gained money, you will select the project with the largest NPV, even if it will take you more time. Okay, and if you just care about the time of return, having larger IRR means that the rate of return is better. So here you get like contradictory results using two different approach, because you don't have the same profile when you are comparing. Okay, so this is what they are telling you here. So this means that the short time return on the firm investment would be higher if the company invests in the shorter lifetime project, because the IRR is larger. But the absolute value, yani the value of NPV, the value of gain that is added to the company, would be higher if the firm invests in the project that has a longer lifetime. Okay, so you might have a lower IRR but a higher NPV in case you don't have the same lifetime. And then to decide to make your decision, it depends, as we said, on your concern, on your if you want premium criterion. So if for you you are not sure, let's say, of the future, or you don't want to invest on a long time period, you can take just short projects but with high IRR. Or if you, let's say, you have a power plant and it can operate for several years, then and you are ready to, let's say, you want to uh, be in this location for a long period of time, you don't you are sure that you can stay in this location for a long period of time, you can select for the projects with larger NPV. Okay. Now, another factor that will help us into making our decision is the debt service coverage ratio. What do we mean by the debt service coverage ratio? The financial viability of a project can eventually fail even if the NPV is positive and the IRR is above the hurdle rate. The project was deemed, so even if the project was deemed favorable and all aspects already taken into concern as NPV and IRR are fine, we still might have problems. Why? Because of debits. So this can be due to the possibility that the project may not be able to serve its outstanding bills on time. So the liquidity of in the investing firm is defined as the ability to meet all financial obligations on time may not be enough in certain years. So especially when you have debits, you have time limits. So let's say at the end of each year, you should pay a certain amount of money. So that's why we should make sure with years of a factor that is called the debt service coverage ratio, that will help us to decide if we are able to pay the debit on time or not. So in this case, the use of the debt service coverage ratio can fill in this gap. How to define now the debt service coverage ratio? The DSCR is defined as the net operating income divided by the total debt service cost. So uh, it it represents, if you want, as we mentioned, whenever we do the calculation, we do the balance for each year to know what is, let's say, the net again until this year, and we divide by the debt service cost, which will include the interest debit plus principal debit. So in other words, it is the ratio of cash that is available to serve the debit. And of course, at the beginning of the project, in general, you will get a negative value, but with time, most time, you should be able to, I mean, you can get a value smaller than one at the beginning, and you are not able to serve 100% the debit, but with time, okay, you should have a value larger than 1, because if this will not occur, you will not be able to serve your debits on time. So the ratio of the cash that is available to serve the debit service includes interest payments, the repayment of the principal, and potential lease payments. If the DSCR is smaller than 1, it means that the cash flow is negative and the project would not be able to generate enough revenue to serve the debit, and the firm would default on the total or on part of the loan. For example, if the DSCR is 0.8, this means that there is only enough cash to serve 80% of the debit. Usually, an annual DSCR is required to ensure the viability of the project annually across the lifetime. Typically, banks require a DSCR between 1.15 and 1.35 in order to accept to give you the loan. So, for example, let us consider the importance of DSCR in wind power. Let's say we are doing a wind power investment. We want to build a wind power plant, and we want to do the analysis of the SCR. What we'll do, we'll study, if you want the amount from wind speed, we can study the amount of energy that can be provided by the wind power station, and then we can evaluate the total income, the total annual income, and divide it by the annual debit that we should pay in order to evaluate the debit ratio. So, for example, here we can consider, let's say, the following table where we compare the loan life cover ratio. Okay, the LLCR is a summary measure. It can give us for different years. Okay, what is the debit balance and what is the ratio of cash flow to debit, to decide if you want if our project will allow us to pay the debits or not. Okay, so creditors are exposed over a number of years, and thereby they would like to know whether the present value of their cash flow will cover the outstanding amount of the loan or not at a certain point of time. So for each year, we should make the calculation. We should divide the net present value, which is the cash flow available for debit service over the loan life, over the debit outstanding. And based on this, we can decide if we go through the project or not. Okay. Now, next time we'll discuss in detail an example on how to calculate the loan life cover ratio and how to decide if the project is economically viable or not, if we will be able to pay the if you want pay the loan that we have, or if we decide then to not go over the project. Any question before we stop? Okay, see you next time. Bye bye.